Afternoon, hello. Welcome to session 3 of our breakout sessions today at the Guam Congress Building. I'd like to join us in welcoming Ms. Kiblas Soaladaob and Mr. McMichael Mutok Jr. And their presentation on preserving Palau cultural heritage and providing online access to the local community. Kiblas Soaladaob is the director of the Bureau of Cultural and Historic Preservation under the Ministry of Human Resources, Culture, Tourism, and Development. Before joining as a director, in October 2021, she was the national coordinator for the Global Environment Facility Small Grants Program under the United Nations Development Program based in Palau from 2013 to 2021. Ms. Soaladaob graduated with a degree in Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology at the University of Hawaii at Hilo in 2007 and a Master of Arts degree in Pacific Studies at the University of Canterbury in Christchurch, New Zealand in 2010. McMichael Mutok Jr. is the Palau National Registrar working under the Bureau of Cultural and Historical Preservation under the Ministry of Human Resources, Culture, Tourism, and Development. The Palau National Registrar maintain, monitor, and manage all of Palau's valuable registered cultural and historic sites through site nomination, registration, and rehabilitation. Mr. Mutok graduated with a degree in Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology at the University of Guam in 2017. So join us in welcoming them, and good luck on your presentation.
Good afternoon, Wilswell. Thank you, Consulate Enna, for joining us from Palau, but based in Guam. So while they put up the PowerPoint, I just got hired to the HPO office in Palau in October 2021. And so I'm a little bit new, I'm a rookie, but I'm very passionate about this type of work, and I'm excited to continue on. So based on the theme for this summit was Technology-Empowered Cultural Heritage, and we're gonna just provide a brief overview of some of the technological things that we're doing at the Historic Preservation Office, and Mr. Mutok will talk more about that. I'll talk more about the boring kind of functions, organization, and administrative stuff of the office. So next slide, please. So, of course, the Bureau of Cultural and Historical Preservation is charged with documenting, protecting, promoting, and preserving Palau's rich cultural heritage, both tangible and intangible. Next slide. So, just for you interested in history, the Palau Historic Preservation Act is really derived from the U.S. Historic Preservation Act of 1966. And so it started in 1974 when Palau and the other Micronesian countries or islands were still under the territory. And so the first law that was enacted in that time was the 1974 Historic Preservation Act. That was, for Micronesia, it would be COMPL 334. And then we all know the history. We eventually separated. Some became Commonwealth, some became countries. And so at that time, 1978, Palau enacted that same law and made it the 1978 Historic Preservation Act, which is PPL 6619. And then a little bit fast forward, when finally we became an independent country, 1982 was the Historical and Cultural Preservation Act, also known as the Palau National Code Title 19, in which our office is mandated to implement Chapter 1 of that national code. So all of this, and this is how the office was established. The only difference is that we incorporated the cultural as well as the historical. So next slide. So yes, our mandate, similar to the other HPO offices, but we also help to foster and protect our cultural and historical resources to enhance, enrich, and foster the Palauan heritage now and into the future. Some of our goals include preservation work for historical and cultural heritage. We also work with partners to help in the cultural preservation and also education to the communities. We also protect the cultural and historical properties and resources that can be both tangible and intangible. So in terms of intangible, like if it's a dance or a song, then we're mandated to also document it and ensure that it's part of the registrar. And then the fourth is to ensure Palau's intangible cultural heritage properties and activities are strongly supported in the face of inevitably increasing foreign contact and interaction. So that's basically what we do. And the next slide is, can you go back again? Okay, yeah, next slide. So really we are part of this whole ministry that was recently restructured. We used to be part of a ministry called the Community and Cultural Affairs, but when this new president came in, he reorganized the offices, and we were now under the Culture, Tourism, Human Resources, and Development. So that red little circle that I tried to make is where we are in the ministry. Next slide. And so with that, some of our functions, like the historical preservation offices in Micronesia, we do cultural research and development. We do registrar and the survey of cultural and historical sites, and also properties, whether it's knowledge or dancing, weaving. And we also have a registrar of living national treasures. So people that are still living, that still have specific knowledge tied to, let's say, fishing or plants or anything like that. We're starting to develop a more comprehensive registrar. We currently have 16, but we would like to have more than, because we know that specific knowledge is specific, so we want to make sure we capture all that kinds of intangible heritage. We preserve, maintain, and administer historical sites or tangible cultural properties. We can also provide technical and financial assistance to agencies or state governments. In the case for Palau, we have 16 states, and they each have to have a state historic preservation office. So our mandate is to also assist them in developing that in their agencies. We develop programs for intangible and tangible cultural properties listed in the National Registrar. For example, we exhibit, whether it's performances or capacity development. We are also involved in like things such as the Festival of Pacific Arts, the expos, and other cultural related music, arts, crafts. We also do public education on Palau's cultural heritage, and we develop partnerships with local, national, and international programs. Next slide, please. So with that, we have a lot of partners. So we have our local partners, such as the Palau National Museum, which is like the Guam Museum. We have the National Archives, the college, the local college, the Visitors Bureau, the Palau Visitors Authority, the Bureau of Human Resources, Tourism, which is under our ministry, state governments, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Environment. The environment, in terms of the environment, we have a lot of projects that we involve in terms of biodiversity and the types of plants that have genetic diversity and thus traditional knowledge associated to the plants. We have partnerships with the HPO offices, the U.S. National Park Services, Japan International Cooperation Agency, or JICA. We also have the Austronesian Forum that's based in Palau. It actually opened its office in 2019, but it evolved in Taiwan. And Guam is also a member of that Austronesian Forum. The Secretariat of the Pacific Community, we're very much involved in terms of the Festival of Arts. And then we have UNDP, UNESCO, sorry, I repeated UNDP again, and many more. So with that, next slide. Thank you very much, and I will move to the more interesting part of the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Kiblas. And so we go to the other presentation. So I'm going to talk about how we preserve and protect our cultural heritage and document them. So we're moving forward where everything goes online. Like everyone uses technology through their computers, their tablets, their cell phones, and so we are presenting this session based upon there's this website we have started since February of this year. So our website is where we upload every documents, publications from the historians, and even though when people they want to do their research on it, they can have access to it anytime, 24/7. So next slide. So how to access the site? You can go to the Ministry of hrctv.pw.culture, that's homepage, and you can go and look at the menu and see. Yes, just click on the homepage, and there's this homepage where it shows our office mission, what is our office is about, what are our plan objectives, our code of conduct, and our PNC Title 19, Chapter 1. And we also show where we post Palau cultural and historical sites, where you want to learn more of the sites instead of visiting it, or if you want to do a report on a specific site, like example like Badrulchau, you want to learn more about the stone monoliths of Palau, and etc. And so the menu has a lot of options where you want to learn. There's the online library where we had it. We document like we scan like 300 plus documents like publications, research articles, and yeah. Next slide. So since we started last year, I think it was like 2 years ago, our office, we have started scanning all the documents and everything that's paper-based, where we try to bring it as an online digital document. And that's where instead of like anyone want to do research, instead of coming to our office and they have to like look through the books and find what do they were looking for. And so we created this software where they had to go and search like a specific topic. If you want to learn the terraces of Palau, you can just type the terrace. So it pops out all the terrace where you want to learn from the time when Osborne came to Palau, and document the terrace, or the time of Kramer that came to Palau. And next slide. So this is how you access the online library. So you just go to the menu and then just click on the BCHP online library, and then it opens like, it shows you a bunch of online publications. For example, that was published from our office, survey reports, oral history, legends of Palau. So this site you can actually like access anywhere and anytime. It can save you time. You can just, if there's something that you want to read about Palau history, you can just access online. And yeah. Next slide. So we also introduced this kind of historic permitting process. Uh, Applying online is easier. It processed quickly and cost effective. Access through computer, tablets, and mobile anytime and anywhere. It also embraces modern technology and value their time. It processes accountability, reduce carbon footprint, and improves local community satisfaction. So this online historic permitting process is where any applicants who want to go and apply, if they want to do their projects like they want to build a house, residential homes, or hotels, they don't have to come to our office and then come and get an application form where they have to drive from a corner, like one of the island, they have to drive like 20 or 30 minutes to the capital, and then just to get the application and have to drive back and then get an attachment or anything that has to attach with the application form. So this is where we come to bring everything online where they can go through their tablets or their computers and they can also fill up that application form and every attachment that goes with it. Next slide. So here's our sample for our application form. So we had a launch sheet last, I think it was like 2 months ago, and there were a few that they did apply for it, so it's more convenient for them. Yeah, the more younger. Yeah. So it's easier for them. It saves time and yeah. And then next slide. So what is the QR code? A QR code is a quick response. It's similar to a barcode. You can scan with your mobile, and you can access information in seconds. So our QR code is where we introduce like our historical sites, like most of the sites that are registered. We use the QR code to post in places, the historical sites, so people would come and because we get a lot of there was a feedback that they don't want to read the whole information in the sign. If there was a signage board on the site, they don't want to read the whole information. So they can grab their phone and just scan the QR code, and they can get their own copy, and they can read it after it. Next slide. So here's an example of Badrulchau. It's one of the stone monoliths in the northern part of Palau, and that's where you can see, like, if you're going through the sites and you want to learn more history about it. Can you play? So those are the monoliths in the northern part of Palau. And of course, you know, like a lot of people, they want to go and visit the area and they want to learn more history about it. And because we always put information there on a signage. Yes, you can scan it and yeah. Yes, it's a tourist site. So if there's tourists like coming to Palau and they want to learn, they just travel north and then visit the site. Usually there's like 150 visitors a month going there.
This is Usmasi. How many sites do you have on your register currently in Palau?
It's 190 sites.
And 190 sites. How much are on the national register?
Actually, when we gather all the reports, there's like about 4,000 identified historical sites. But the one on the national register is 190.
You have 190 sites
Yeah.
on the national register. Okay, very good. Now Palau has how many significant timelines in your history? Okay, that's pre-contact. Okay.
Four?
So you include Spanish,
Spanish,
German,
Germany, Japan.
Japan, and then the
And,
U.S.
US.
Okay, so in your 190 entries of the National Register, how many reflect the pre-contact period in percentage?
Uh, there's a lot, but we haven't go through like getting the total amount of historical site.
national register.
I think it was about 20.
20. Let me ask
Yeah.
you this then. How many of your registered sites are World War II?
There's a lot. I think,
Okay.
yeah, like
So I'm the historian for Guam. Okay, on the Guam count, all right, we also have the 5 major timelines. But World War II dominates the entries. It's really very pathetic. Why can't we concentrate on our own history first and register our pre-contact historical sites and along the way? Because I remember, I'm more than you, when the first Palauan from your museum went to Western Samoa. This was at the time when you were transitioning to your own independence. There were 3 young Palauans that came to Western Samoa to see what FESPAC was all about. I could never forget those 3. And they went like this, Malia, this is the first time since we became independent that we went, gosh, now we have to know who we are. Because all that time of the foreign education imposed on us, we were always studying about them, but never about us. Okay, that's one thing. So if you're looking at the Guam register, the Palau register, and in Guam it's very high, higher than Palau. Almost in Tumon, let me give an example. Tumon, the most documented pre-contact, early Spanish contact here in Guam. All the national registered sites are Japanese World War II pillboxes, World War II bunkers. What happened to the Chamorro history of Tumon pre-contact? None are on the national register because the focus is to document World War II. It's really sad. I'm just saying this from my observation. Thank you so much for that. Now, my other question that I have here is, in your historical markers, because I'm an advocate for indigenous language, so when I went to your island, and I went several times, and I would go to the Palauan interpreter said, oh, so this is Koror. Tell me, what is this name place in your language? And what is Koror in Palau?
Orior,
What is Palau in Palau?
Belau,
What is Pelelu in your language?
Balilio.
Exactly. And I said, you better start writing. Okay, no, really, you're historic preservation, right? Because when you say Koror again,
Orior,
say Pelelu,
Belilio,
Palau.
Palau.
Okay, sometimes through our pronunciation, we can derive the meaning of what that place means. But if we're looking and the archaeologists, because I guess by design, have to use the U.S. Geological Survey map, especially for Guam, for any entry onto the National Register. All right? So I can cite you so many examples that the archaeologists have used in their report. And I'm looking at that and I'm saying, okay, so use the U.S. Geological Survey map reference, but at least in parentheses, put down the Chamorro reference so that the people who are reading this can derive the meaning through the Chamorro language. You cannot attain that through the, like let's say our capital here. All right, the English is Adelup, no meaning. But when you say Adeluk in Chamorro, it has a meaning. When you say Aganya, no meaning, but when you say Hagatnya in Chamorro, it has a meaning. So I really like your program because you're very, very inclusive. It's not, you're dealing with folklore. Am I understanding the way you read the guidelines or your mandate for your own office? And I really appreciate that. When I first went to Palau to attend the first Micronesian Endowment for Historic Preservation meeting, this was, I think, like almost 20 years ago. At that time, all the 16 states, if I could remember correctly, and I think I'm correct, they all had to begin to write their own history of their own state. They had a publication of that. They gave me some of the publication. And they were interviewing the elders to try to go back in the history of that particular, I guess you call them states, right? The 16 states, yeah, and that was a very beautiful thing. But start recording before you lose it, the name place, record it how they pronounce it in your own language. I know this may seem unimportant, but in time, if the younger generation is learning it Koror, they're going to keep using Koror. But we are also preservationists in our own language. I have so many questions, but let me give this to the audience. But that's one thing because it's really important. In 2004, this is what we did, and this was an experimental project with the University of Guam. It's a partnership. They wrote the National Register and Guam Register bilingually. It's the first time it's been done. But that was 2004. That's almost 20 years ago. And they did it on World War II sites. And so I'm an advocate of oral history because it's really different from the written history. And I think it's very important that you do that as an office. We are historic preservation. We just don't protect sites. We also protect our language. Thank you.
Thank you.
If we could just also, thank you so much for opening this up for a conversation, but if we can go ahead and just hold on to our questions until the end of the presentation, that way we can just, give our presenters the full time, and then if we have time, we'll ask questions. Thank you again.
It's okay. Okay, next slide. So this is how we install a interpretive signage to each of the registered sites in Palau. And usually when we print out the sign, we input all the information in there. So later on we get like feedback from tourists, the locals. They would say, it's really hard for them to just walk, like under the sun, and they have to read the whole thing. So that's how we try to improvise, like posting the QR code, like the signage here, and then this is the other signage that we made. The next slide. So the signage is Badrulchau. So it's more simple, has a lot of a few information on it. You can know it's a registered site, and anyone can go and just scan their phones with a QR code, and they can go and tour around the site, look at it, and then they can go home and just read it after that, so they can learn more about the site. Next slide. So this is like our example. Actually, there's some that's we actually it's not even posted yet, but we started like uh, making this like last month. So we're planning to print it out and post it to each of the registered sites in Palau. And this will enable everyone to know that if you go and visit the site, you will know it's a historical site, and it's listed in the Palau Register of Historic Places. So next slide. So the Palau Register of Historic Places, there are 190 historic and cultural sites that are inclusion in the Palau Register of Historic Places. It provides on the website, if you scan it on the QR code, it directs you to the website where it provides you detailed information and pictures. For example, like Japanese structures. You can see the picture from the present day and the pictures from the earlier, before the war and after that. And also to know that if the site is privately owned or is it government owned. And you can access to your mobile, your computer, and also your tablet, anywhere if you want to do more for education purposes and research. And this can also train your guides, your tour guide, to be aware like they had the right information instead of making like new different, like you would pass it to someone saying a cat and the other person would say, oh, it's a dog. Yeah. Next slide. So here's the website, and it's on the menu bar, and you can just click it on the list of Palau registered site. Instead of visiting the site, if you want to learn more about the history of the sites that are listed, that are registered, you can just click on the link, and it just pops out what kind of sites from each state and what other information. And it has a lot of pictures that are posted on it, and the site number that's being identified. And it gives you a wide range of when a person want to go and want to learn, like, oh, I have visited this site, but there's no information. Let me look it online. And yeah, and some pictures. Next slide. So the site gives you a wide range of information if you want to learn more about it, do the research on it, such as the terrace, all the terraces in Palau. Next slide. Also the stone features like the stone face, stone monoliths. Next slide. And it also gives you more information about Palau World War II, the one for the Japanese era, the World War II sites. Next slide. And we also have our quarterly newsletter. So once it's being published, then we just post it online. So if you want to learn like our programs for the past, because we usually posted our newsletter every 3 months. Next slide. So what are the challenges? The challenges right now is in Palau, there's a lot of elders who have no access to computers, and it's hard for them to learn how to, like browse through the internet and applying the online permitting process. If they want to apply a historic permit, they had to, or they can come to our office. So we also can like assist them. We just provide a computer for them. So if they wanna, if they need an assistant in applying the historical permit, they can come to our office and we can like assist them with it. And next slide. Yeah. Next slide. Okay, so any questions?
Right now we have 11 staff.
But then each state has their office too. No,
Not
that's
all
not your
states-
office.
Yeah, not all states have a state
I see.
HPO, but
Okay.
we're trying to help them. I think we have three states out of the 16 have established.
Now, can I ask you, in your organization, because you have the SHPO, right? So the division is, how many fall under archaeology?
For the staff.
Yeah, of the 11.
4
How many fall under history?
under
History.
history. Oral history is 3.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
That's kind of a balance there.
yeah. But we
Yeah.
need more.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
We need more for
Because
both.
you're a large state. Oh, the other thing that I want to ask you too. Okay, so you did discuss private and government land, okay, to historic sites. So what percentage of Palau is private land in terms of the Palauan archipelago? Do you know the percentage?
I think for Palau it's less than 50%. If you would consider the whole bubble
Yeah.
dub is because most of the people who owns the land are on the coastal areas. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So in that case, how many of your historical sites are under public land? Because of the access, that's what I'm trying to, because that's the problem Guam has. Many of the sites are private property.
Yeah,
and to
usually,
access it,
there's one example from one of the state. It's a private land, but the historical features like the stone path and the stone platform are government owned.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I see. And
but maybe it's like less than % that government owned, because most of the historical sites are owned by families. Like the clans, they own a specific village or, yeah.
That's what I was thinking, that it's clan land still, yeah.
Mm.
Anybody wants to ask a question?
Have you done any QR codes for any of your intangible resources? Are you using that to promote some of these that you've recorded and you could bring out to let other people see or to understand them better?
We have not. We started this QR code about last year. So for intangible, because it's a little different in terms of like who owns the knowledge. So it would have to require maybe a little bit more taking time and studying, like how can that be, is it accessible to public or maybe not? Yeah, so, but we want to go to that direction, but we want to make sure we do it appropriately, yeah.
Sulang. No, just a follow-up question or comment maybe on that because, and I think really also related to previous comments by Malia with regards to Palauan efforts or Palau's efforts to preserve culture and being registered on the national. I wonder if, because Palau, just like every one of us, I think our histories and everything that we have always been kept in the head. It was never a public information. historic preservation came along just recently. That's a Western concept, and I know sometimes it's difficult for some of those to come out. So with intangible cultural heritage, where practitioners and holders of these traditions are still alive, maybe Palauan treasures, what is your office doing to ensure that those people that holds those valuable knowledge are maybe even supported, or at least their knowledge is not going to be buried along with them when they go? Is there some efforts by your office to protect those type of maybe national treasures, so to speak? And are you also promoting storytelling or history telling within the family versus being put up on a system that is organized by your office? Thank you.
Thank you, Larry, for that question. So, in terms of the intangible, this has always been like at least for me when I first came to this bureau, it's kind of like the untouched, sensitive part of the office. Yeah, that's kind of like, as a Palauan, if you look at it, you're like, oh, I don't want to deal with it because it's a lot of, traditional knowledge, sacred knowledge. I don't want to go and, have other Palauans like be thinking I'm insensitive. But I think now it's really critical because just the other week, I went out to one of my dad's village to document some oral history, and then I looked at what the office had against what I'm gaining, and I'm realizing like some of these elders now are like, we gotta share this now because nobody's learning this stuff. So there's some members in the community that are really kind of open now to sharing the knowledge, but also at the same time, the reason why we're doing our historic preservation plan this year is to really have a really good plan for the intangible cultural heritage part, because that's always been like the part of this office that's not kind of progressed as the tangible parts. Yeah, and maybe it's due to the previous people. They're all archaeologists, so it's good that they have a social anthropologist in the office now. So yeah. I'm kidding. But yes, it's a lot of good work, and for FSM, like maybe we can share a lot of lessons because we're kind of in a similar context for what are we mandated to do in the office, and if it's strengthening the intangible cultural heritage, then yes, let's do it. We're excited. Rita.
I think it's also important to let them know that for documentation purposes, and that it can be archived.
Yeah.
That it's not necessarily going to be put out in social media, but just to reassure them that, this is for documentation purposes
Right.
only.
Yeah.
And then maybe after, down the road, it can be shared publicly.
No, that's really good because we're also lucky that we have that partnership with UNESCO. And UNESCO does do a lot of ICH kind of programs. So I want to share an example in Vanuatu actually. They have a system where they can document or record, let's say, a specific knowledge from an elder. And if the elder decides they don't want to share it, the office or the government entity that handles it can put it in lock and key in a safe somewhere where it's not to be touched unless this elder says, pass it on to my granddaughter or something. So it's a system that maybe we want to go and explore more and probably learn from Vanuatu. How do they do that? But yeah, we're excited too that UNESCO's been a good partner in kind of doing those ICH programs. Yeah. Some are. Yeah, some are kind of still reluctant, yeah.
Hi, thank you for your presentation today. I have a question. How does your office get funding for the projects that you're doing?
So we get NPS funds through HPO. So that's that's mostly what we get, but we also get local government Palau funds. We get some help from UNESCO. We got recent help from UNDP, about 200,000 for climate change assessment of historical sites that are sensitive to climate change. So yeah, we have funding opportunities here and there. So that's why partnership is very critical. Reach out even beyond your U.S. connections. Go to Taiwan, yeah. They can definitely help support with other initiatives that
Okay, because you had mentioned earlier that one of your partners was the National Park Service, and I was just wondering how that connection was. Okay.
Oh, so for us, because, well, of course, you know, Palau is a country, but we are a freely associated state. So like FSM and the Marshall Islands, we have HPO offices like Saipan and Guam, but because we are a country, we're kind of like, we're not restricted to the U.S. laws. We have our own laws too. So that's why for our bureau, our mandate is the Historical and Cultural Preservation Act, whereas the U.S. mandate is the Historic Preservation Act. So so we kind of benefit from being national, but also our U.S. Relationship.
Can I just make that clear for the Palau delegation? So when we celebrated the quincentennial of the Magellan Voyage here in Guam, for those of you that remember that but do not recall, it could not be a Guam case. It had to be the Secretary of State of the United States because we are fall under the United States. And we are the only entity in the United States, in the entire United States, that had a relationship with the first circumnavigation around the globe. But if you remember, I don't think the government of Guam really played that much of a major role in the event because we were all restricted with all these U.S. laws because we're not independent. Am I correct in this, Rita? Right, yeah, but still they have to fall into the parameter because there's all these protocols that have to occur. So the way I felt about that event really is, again, the indigenous people were sidetracked in the event. Let's face it. How many Manamkus did you see go down to see the ship? All these restrictions. You know what we're talking about. Well, no, it's just and also that. Right. Yeah. What? Yeah.
For our Guam friends, I think maybe the trust also has relationships with the Austronesian Forum. So
right.
Maybe that's one partner that you can really connect with.
Yeah. Because we still fall, even when we go to FESPAC, we fall under the banner of the United States. Guam, CNMI, and Hawaii, and American Samoa. You're independent.
Before we close the session, which we haven't, please help yourself to the many comic books and the folders and the pamphlets and the brochures.
Yeah, they're souvenirs from Palau.
Yes. No. Mm. Yes, please help yourself.
Also, we
Oh.
can recognize the Ms. Adelena Jose, Consul General for Palau Consulate here in Guam.
Thank you. Thank you for your support.
Before we close out, we would just like to present you guys with a small token of our appreciation. The Guam Preservation Trust thanks you so much for giving us the time to share all that you guys are doing over in Palau. We're really glad that you guys are here today.